Morning light, we bloom again. From the deep we rise within. Down below, then we ascend. Lotus heart, lotus heart, lotus heart, we bloom again.
Welcome back. Welcome to Bloom with Dr. Darlene. I'm Dr. Darlene Powell Garlington, and you guys have been privileged to meet the Bloom women. Well, today you're going to be really, really thankful, excited, appreciative that I have two of my closest guy friends who are my Bloom men. And they're going to talk about some of the same issues that I talked about with the women. But what's really special about this is that they are two men who know how to express their thoughts and feelings and to show emotional intimacy and vulnerability. So I'm hoping that the men out there who are watching will be able to emulate and model, because women, we like that. We like when men are open and transparent and emotionally vulnerable. So today I have with me, to my right, Angelo Hunt, who is also a writer, and he is a voracious reader. He sends me lots of books to read. He's a Wellwood follower. I learned about Wellwood from him. And over here I have Dr. Lambert Shell. And Lambert helps the community. He is not only director of a library, but one of the things that I actually adore about both of them is that they are devoted fathers. And Lambert has two sons of different ages with a big age gap, and his commitment and devotion to them is very inspiring. So we know that as women, we appreciate men who value fatherhood, and we also know that when they do that, it gives us a greater indication, again, of their ability to have emotional vulnerability. So my book that talks about why men really fall in love, what makes them, what characteristics and qualities in a woman attract men. And I've heard various things, but I know what I think it is from my anecdotal research of talking to men, like my two friends here. So I'm going to ask you guys, what makes you fall in love?
It's a large list of things for me.
Okay.
I think how they support me as an individual in my particular journey. And I think for me, particularly in terms of my emotional expression, is a woman prepared to support me in developing that lexicon? Because as men, or as me as a man anyway, my dictionary in terms of emotions were very limited. And I think through the years, I've learned to add language to it in a way that makes me more available to co-contribute to a meaningful, loving relationship. So I think for me, one of the most important things for a partner or a potential partner anyway is how do they support me and how do they see me as a man on a journey, opening up emotionally and not criticizing, but supporting me and assisting me in developing a lexicon towards a much more healthier way of communicating.
I appreciate that because that requires trust.
Sure.
And I think when two people are able to establish trust in a relationship, both are able to be more vulnerable and ask that other person to have empathy and to show support in how we're growing, because we're constantly developing and growing as people. So you want a partner that's able to support and facilitate your growth. I appreciate that. Lamb?
I think it's the same thing. I think just someone that finds some commonality in who you are as a person, as an individual. Understand your love languages, because not everybody's love language is the same in terms of being committed to just, being what men in reality should be: providers, protectors, and loving, and trying to understand that, but also, giving a man space to be a man. I think what's happening now is a lot of us in terms of society is trying to take away a lot of the men's masculinity and want to give into a lot of stuff. And as long as we have that and serve as protectors and people who's supposed to do the right things as it relates to a relationship, we should continue that. But someone who just fully understands what a man role is supposed to be, and have a man, for a man to understand what a woman role is supposed to be. Not generically in terms of a woman's, in the kitchen and doing all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of, just looking at somebody who's supposed to be the head of the household in many ways and supportive in many ways, and also someone that's going to be with you, that's going to help you build upon whatever you have and come together and make things, better and greater for the benefit of the family or the benefit of the community.
I'm so glad you clarified that, because I was going to call you sexist and misogynistic. No, I actually agree with you as I've matured. I talked with a group of women and I shared that when I was younger, I'm incredibly independent, I'm self-sufficient, and I think I had a controlling spirit. And it was difficult for me to yield in a relationship. And when I married Dr. Ernest Garlington, it was a completely different dynamic. And I learned how to share power and to respect each other, to yield to one another. But then what I really found out, and, even more recently in my relationship, is that it's a beautiful feeling to be able to, and it goes back to what Angelo said about trust in a relationship, to have somebody empower you to grow. And I said this in the women's group, that it's biblical. Because God says, if a man loves a woman the way Christ loves the church, who wouldn't want to submit and yield to that? But the first time I experienced that, it gave me just a visceral reaction and a heartthrob to recognize that it actually felt good to be able to share power and not to feel like I had to be in control. But that really came, again, from trust, because I trust my judgment. Even when I make mistakes, I'm okay with it. Could I trust somebody else enough to say, if they make a mistake, I still got your back. We're ride or die.
Right.
So that, to me, is enriching and heartening to get to that point.
Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, that's the thing that erodes the relationship faster than anything else. That trust factor. When things aren't going good and something happens, what kind of faith do you have in that person to either bounce back or realizing that this is a mistake and it can be detrimental to your relationship, and how do you bounce back from it? How do you respond from it? And how do you value that? How do you support? How do you help? How do you let a person, pick themselves up, and you support in whatever way? So I think a lot of that has to be learned and taught, and a lot of that has to be seen in other family dynamics. And some women have it and some don't. Some men have it and some men don't have it either. So it all depends on, the situation, what's going on.
Well, that's my job. When people come to me and they are insightful enough, and sometimes it's a blind spot. They don't recognize what their own kind of flaws and challenges are in communicating in a relationship. So the first step is really awareness, and then being willing to say, so it's not like they can't change. It's, are you willing to change? So whenever I hear that, and I've had in-depth conversations over the years with both of you, and when you talk openly about the challenges you've had in relationships, I always say to both of you at times, if you're with somebody and it's not going well, are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to even go with them to therapy? So my question is, what would make you go, and what would make you say no to going with a woman to therapy?
Well, for me, I think many relationships are doomed at the beginnings, given why do we go into relationships? And I think we tend to treat them as all-purpose vending machines. And I think in very instances that we need to figure out, what am I supposed to be giving to myself versus what the relationship is supposed to be given to us as a couple. And I think we go inside there trying to compensate, I don't know, for our fathers, a lack of the father relationship, or mothers, etc. But going to therapy, and I've gone to therapy, which is very interesting in my past marriage. And I was very clear about what I wanted when I went to therapy. All I wanted was accountability, because I felt that if that was a premise that we could begin on, then there was an opportunity to build on top of that. But, and I'm not here to bash, be very clear about that.
Just don't say her name, please. Don't say her name.
I'm not here to bash. But I made it very clear in the very beginning and through the end of therapy that I just wanted one thing, and that was accountability. And for whatever the reason, she wasn't available or didn't want to do it. So despite my spirit and openness in terms of going to therapy, which I will always be open to, it all depends now, because I'm a different person than I was back then. And so I don't think everybody's ready for therapy. And sometimes you have to go to therapy to find that out. But I think there are some prerequisites that can give you an idea of whether they're good candidates for therapy or not, I think, anyway. And I think, where they're in their own personal journey with regards to self-confrontation, what type of relationship do they have with themselves, and what does their inner journey look like? And I think that's a lot of information that would provide me with regards to understanding, to some extent anyway, because I'm not a therapist, but, this is a good opportunity for the both of us to evolve and to benefit from therapy or not. Now, I can't answer that question until we go to therapy, but I think in some instances you can meet people, right up front, like, hey, I don't think so. I don't think so. I got all the answers. I know everything, Angela. I said, all right, okay, yeah.
But what you're saying about therapy is so critical, and that's why I highly recommend premarital,
Sure.
rather than going once you're in the marriage and you're seeing that there are challenges. And what Dr. Shell said earlier about compatibility, we want to make sure that you're equally yoked. In my past relationships, I tended to choose people that liked my controlling nature, and they were okay with me making all the decisions. So, for me to evolve and recognize I can't blame them. I changed. They didn't change. I came to an awareness to say, I don't want that. I want to share it. So what you're saying, if I had gone to therapy, you're right. I probably wouldn't have been ready. I would have been still stuck in the patterns that I had developed in terms of my autonomy and wanting agency and everything. But being able to go gives an opportunity to gain empathy. Because sometimes, as you said, we're so caught up in our own way of seeing things that we can't see it from the other person's perspective. And a therapist will help you to do that.
I agree, but I also, in the answer to the question, I think that a person should go to therapy first before there's any group therapy. Unlike some folks, I can't be in the business of helping you if you can't help yourself, or I can't be in the business of being with someone who doesn't understand their own issues. And sometimes going to get that help first may provide you a gateway of letting you know that maybe you're not ready to be in a relationship, or maybe you're not ready to be in this relationship with someone or an encounter with them until you heal whatever ills you may have in your life, or things that you may be upset about, or someone teach you a way to discuss issues or get to a certain point. So for me, I just think a person needs to go get help themselves. And also for me, I wasn't one of the people who didn't believe in therapy at all until, I had a major crisis. And then, I'm kind of, who do you see? Did you go see, I'm extremely macho, I guess, so
You've grown.
me talking to a man in therapy, I feel some way about that. Me, talking to a woman, I felt a lot easier. Not that they would understand my issues or my problems, but it was just like it was an easier talk to someone that, my own little crazy head that may have something over me or something like that. That's just who I am. That's how I'm built. Always been that way.
But that's insightful, Lamb.
So I had to figure that out first. And, and then even to this day, I think that if I need to go back to therapy, it would have to be someone that of the opposite sex, but also, going to a doctor in a sense. So I have a female doctor or a male doctor. I don't know if that's sexist or not sexist, but just having the comfortability of talking to somebody where you really can talk and really have somebody understand, who you are. Sometimes when we talk to other men, they give us the same kind of perspective, not something that's totally different. They can understand where we're coming from and agree to us. Somebody that's different can probably tell you know what, you're not right. And this time, and, you may be right that time. So someone figuring himself out first before we can go sit at the table as a group to figure out, if we are made for each other, or if we can, last in this relationship is a better choice for me.
You said a lot, and I hear you. I think that it can be done simultaneously, but yes, people need to deal with their own issues. But sometimes our issues can't really be fully addressed, or they don't even manifest until we're in interpersonal dynamics. So a person on their own, when you talk about accountability, you hold that person accountable because they're trying to express their perspective, but you know what you see in their behavior. So going together allows, if you care about the person and you're committed to them and you love them, it allows you to hold them accountable with the therapist, because they may not be able to hear it from you. But if you say, well, last week we talked about the fact that when you tell me that I'm not a responsible person because I didn't wash the dishes. I feel like you're generalizing and you're saying a negative about me as a character flaw. I don't like when you do that. Mm-hmm. And then the next week they do something similar. The therapist can say, well, didn't we say last week how that made him feel and how can we change that language? So it's growth together. And there's nothing more beautiful than growth together. And we all bring baggage. Sometimes it's Target, no shade on Target, or it's Louis Vuitton baggage, but we all bring in baggage. So it's like, how do we unpack that together as a team and in partnership if you're my ride or die?
Or that therapist likes you better than me. Let's go find someone else.
Oh, I got to tell this funny story. It happens, and some of the couples that you'll see on my podcast will probably share this with you. Oftentimes, I'll have a woman that I'm seeing in therapy, and she'll say, he doesn't talk, he doesn't open up, he's not vulnerable. You know, it's so frustrating dealing with him. And I'll say, well, let's try to get him in. And eventually the guy will come in, and he's sitting there stoic initially. And then he starts to open up and he opens up more and he starts shedding tears. And then she's like, well, why the hell are you saying that to her? And you didn't say it to me. And I'm like, well, isn't that why you brought him here? and I don't have the same emotional connection with him. So and I think I have a little bit of skill. So it's a different dynamic. But you're right. Sometimes that happens and then the woman will feel uncomfortable. So I have to try to handle that to help her to see I'm helping you. These skills that we're doing in here, the goal is to generalize it so that he becomes open and vulnerable at home. So thank you for sharing that. That's true.
Well, how many women out there are able to deal with male vulnerability? I mean, a lot of women say, I want a man who can share his emotions and just let it all out, you know. But I think the true test is, you know, how available are they to even support that or open to that? Because I think a lot of us, we walk around with these scripts, and I think to the detriment of our relationships. And so I push onto them what I think a woman is, and she pushes onto me what she thinks a man is. And we have this clashing all the time. So I think part of the problem as I see it, though, is that, and doing that, I think a lot, as I said earlier, a lot of relationships are doomed at their very beginnings. Because we walk in, and everybody has baggage, as she said. I mean, all of God's children has baggage, and I think the best we can do is try to get down to carry on as best as possible. I don't know if we ever get rid of our baggage 100%. I think it's just part of being human, part of the human, part of humanity. Yeah, it's just part of the human condition that we have baggage. But I think becoming aware of our baggage and what role does it play in hijacking our abilities to have a meaningful, loving relationship is very key to all of this. I think also is that a lot of the work that has to be done in a relationship has to be done on ourselves, separate and apart from each other.
What Lambert was saying.
Right.
Yes.
We have, and certainly we need guidance when we get together in terms of where are we now with the work that we've done, and how do we take all this information and pull it together and make just sort of a happy, loving communion with each other throughout this whole process and all that. You know, I think, you know, and what is the purpose of a relationship? You know, what is the purpose? To have sex, have a good time, go out and drink and all that? I think one of the premises, I believe anyway, is to help us become our best version. But the problem there is that you have to find a partner who buys into that or who's prepared to do that as well, as I see it.
Well, as you said earlier, I think those are things that you talk about even before you commit. You look at your negotiables and your non-negotiables. What is it that I really want in a relationship? And any woman who doesn't see vulnerability as strength has a problem. And so she needs to obviously do some work on herself. I've been blessed in our friendships that both of you have cried with me. And that deepened our friendship. And to me, that's what emotional connection is all about as human beings. So whenever we have a relationship where we can be our authentic selves, and you guys have seen my flaws, you've seen the good, you've seen the bad, you've seen the ugly. I didn't ask you to laugh. So that's a true friendship, because I don't want to just have to show you guys a facade or, you know, be pretentious or put my best foot forward all the time. I want to be able to be real. So that is reciprocal. So in a relationship, you also have to have the courage and the conviction to say to the women this is who I am. And if I need to cry, or if I'm angry and I need to express it, as long as I'm not being explosive or volatile, I want you to be able to sit with me and give me space to do that.
Yeah, but doing that, and I'm not going to generalize everyone. You know, you're looked at as a man being, like you said, emotional. That's looked at as being weak. There's a lot of women. It's looked at being weak, or you're not. That's not yourself. That's not who you are, or you know, you're soft, and you get a lot of that. And if you're too strong, then you get criticized for that. Yeah. You're not too forgiving, or you're not very helpful. You don't care how I feel, and it's like, you know, how do you balance that? I think that's a bigger balance, and it's absolutely crazy. So you sit there and you're emotional about something, and that's, man, look at you, soft. You over there, you know. And then when men cry, it's like we're crying, but we're also at the same time figuring it out.
Yes.
At the same time. But if you're with a person that don't understands that, or look at that as being weak, you know, they talking to girlfriends. Well, he was home crying, and the girlfriend's in their ear, or he's weak. And if you're too strong, well, he don't really care about what's going on with you. He don't, he just care about himself, or he's being strong, or i.e., you know, my father, I don't know, my father crying about nothing. So does that make him more manly? No. I mean, he just did what he's supposed to do. He came home, he worked, he provided for us, he did that kind of stuff. So in this world of dating now, a lot of guys, I think, are confused in terms of what you should do.
Okay. And I think you said the word balance. And I think you guys are clearly strong, accomplished, caring men. So to me, it's knowing that, just like me, that I can cry, but I'm not going to decompensate. And even if I do, I'm resilient. So showing women that, yes, you can cry, and then you also have your strength, that balance. And to me, I'm going to agree with something you said that I didn't think I'd agree with. A woman who's judging that really needs her own therapy.
Sure.
A woman who judges a man for his vulnerability and doesn't see that as strength is somewhat immature. Yes, ladies, we got to grow up. Or they have their own issues that they're still trying to work through. So let's work through them so that we can honor and cherish and empower men who are capable and able and willing to show their vulnerability.
Well, I think a man like Lamb and myself, we would be on the outside of what's normally expected from men. And I think as a result of that is that they may find a man like myself or Lamb appealing because we're very different in the sense that what traditional men have been exposed to, if I can say that. So that here comes Lamb. You know, I'm emotionally available. I've done the work on myself. I'm constantly working. It's a continuum. I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm working on myself. I want to be happy and be a very, very good contributor to my relationship. I was like, wow, I never heard that before. Because I've been told that too. I've never heard that before. You're so different. And, I think I could do something with this. But I think on the other hand, though, the true test is, where are they in their own journey? Because you can only go so far with somebody if they've been troubled with themselves. Mm-hmm. And I've made that mistake. Or I've learned through doing that. I don't want to call it a mistake, but it's part of my journey of learning. So I've selected partners who said, this is great, Angelo. Who you are as a man, you're evolving. I've never heard a man speak like that before and talked about the work he's been doing and his availability to be in a healthy, meaningful, loving relationship. I said, okay, we could do this, right? Yeah, we could do this. Somewhere along the journey, that's lost. And who they are and who I am becomes conflicting. Mm-hmm. And then we get into a state of stasis, right? There's no movement. I said, well, wait a minute. I thought you wanted a man like me. And in fact, my past relationship, my past marriage, my ex-wife would reference her brother as being a real man. She didn't know that I knew that he beat up his sister-in-law and broke her jaw. And I said, is that your example of a real man? And she said, well, the woman made him mad. I said, but that's no excuse, I said,
absolutely not.
Broke the woman's jaw.
Go to jail. Toxic masculinity, something that you said earlier, Lamb, is connected to what Angelo is saying. You guys, sometimes it's perpetuated in society. And when I see people tell a little boy not to cry, and that's in what your dad showed you, and I'm sure that our fathers who grew up hearing that cried in private, and that's not healthy or fair, that they should be able to have a person or place to be their true selves. So a woman who says what your ex said, again, hasn't really grown in terms of her emotional maturity to recognize that that's a strength and that it grows. And I think it's God's deepest and most precious gift to us when we can have that level of genuine spiritual and emotional connection where we can be ourselves. The more we can be ourselves with the person, the more you feel that sense of intimacy and closeness. And that's what my book says. When women say, what attracts a man? It could be your physical appearance initially, but that doesn't last. And it has to be that feeling of, I can trust this person. I can be myself with this person. They have my back. I know that they are there for me, even when I make mistakes, and that they want to grow with me. They want to come back and apologize when they mess up, take accountability, and they want to say, how can I do better together? And that's not easy. So that doesn't mean that you're not going to have conflict. Conflict is inevitable. It's how do you manage that conflict? So before we end up in closing, I want to ask 2 questions I ask everybody, whatever the topic may be, because my brand is be loving to ourselves and others more. So how can men love themselves more?
That's a difficult question, because do men love themselves? I mean, that's the reality of the sense. Do men love themselves, especially if you have, kids to take care of, other people to take care of, and you are the leader of not only your family, your siblings, or you're the leader at work, and nobody in those situations ever take care of you. So when do a man ever decide to do anything for themselves?
You're saying so much, you're going to make me scream.
And that's the issue.
That's compassion fatigue. You can't just take care of others. You're so devoted to people, everybody. If somebody needs something, you're there for them. You played pro ball overseas. So even if it's going to shoot some hoops, there has to be ways that we engage in self-care, and it's self-sacrificing is not healthy to not have something that you say, I'm doing this for me.
Yeah, but again, if we're talking about taking care of yourself, you have a partner to understand that, you know what, this person that I'm dating or that I'm with, he does so much for everyone else, including me. I need to let him know he needs a break, or you know what, go do something.
And if she doesn't do it,
or anybody, even at work. I mean, even if you're at work or you're somewhere, somebody that sees that you do everything, you know what, you go do something for yourself. And you don't get a lot of that in positions,
in relationships
or people who are in leadership positions.
But 2 things, Lamb. You can be stubborn. So if somebody says to you, here, take a break, do this, you can't let that toxic masculinity say, well, I can't do that because I've already going to help this person and help that person. So it's you also being able to receive it. Right. And then I have to do a whole nother now podcast on communication and assertiveness, because not speaking up and saying what your needs are isn't fair to you. So just kind of saying, I'm going to self-sacrifice. And even though this person isn't sharing with me and having empathy, I'm just going to continue doing what I'm doing, isn't healthy communication. And you're not giving that person a chance, and you probably have told her, but to change. If it's anybody, a person at work, to say, I need to set boundaries here, and I need to be able to do these things for myself, meaning I need to shut my door because I have to finish this contract and everybody's coming in to ask me for something. No is a complete sentence. So setting those boundaries so that you can take care of yourself.
Oh, yeah. I think in terms of male self-love, one of the beginnings of that is to look at how you define your sense of maleness. And I think a lot of us get jacked up in that. I think we get ideas, obviously, from the media, culture, et cetera. And sometimes these ideas we get about maleness has nothing to do with who we are on a deeper level. And I think as men of color, the model for successful men is a European model. And we don't have access like that. We just don't. So we fall into a state of shame because we can't achieve certain things that they can achieve because they have access in a way that we don't. And I think we need to look at how do we define our sense of maleness? Because if you don't understand that and understand the traps that you fall into, you don't begin to love yourself in a way that you really can love yourself. And when you begin to understand those traps you fell into in terms of how you define your sense of maleness, you begin to understand how you've been hijacked from your own journey of becoming a whole individual. I think for men, particularly men of color, our journey is entirely different. We could look at, I go to work every day, Midtown Manhattan, right? And I see men who don't look like me. I overhear their conversations, and my conversation is very different. I hear what they talk about, their successes, etc. I don't have access to the way that they do. And I understand that, but I don't beat up on myself saying, well, you haven't achieved the level of success as they have, and therefore you're not a man, and therefore you should be ashamed of yourself, which would interfere with my ability to love myself on a deeper level. Absolutely. So I think many men need to really examine how do they define themselves as men, and what aspects of that definition is unhealthy, and what is blocking me from loving myself on a deeper level.
I love what you're saying, and I think as men, and Lamb, you said this to me earlier, that you guys need to have more forums, and you've done it in the past, where men can talk about exactly that, and especially men of color, men from the African diaspora, because you add on oppression, you add on microaggressions, you add on implicit bias that you guys deal with every day, to then going home and feeling that you're treated in a way that's disrespectful. So respect is so important for all men, but especially for Black men to feel in their relationships, because so often you feel disrespected in society. Last question, piggybacking off of that, how can men love women more?
For me, just be yourself. Just be who you are, genuinely who you are. And then, all the things that, your mother may have taught you how to respect people, all the things that you learn as you get older in terms of just loving a person, just being there, being supportive. That's it. It's a very simple question to a very simple answer. If you're doing the things you need to do to show love and support and care for a person, then everything should go well.
Thank you. I love that.
I think the answer to that question is, one of the most important relationships you'll ever have is with yourself. And what does that journey look like, when you go within yourself to become a much more whole individual? And the more you see your own humanity, the more you see others' humanity as well. And when you see that, it allows you a sort of openness to love people on a deeper level. I see within myself, I see what I see in you, I see within myself. And I think the more work I do on myself, I see other people's humanity. And the more I see that, I think it brings another value to me being able to love a woman in a much more meaningful way.
Thank you. You guys have been phenomenal. We have to have you back because we need to continue this conversation. So stay tuned for more episodes. Follow us on social media. Look at the show notes to find out all the places we'll be, because we're going to continue to bloom as men and as women and together. Thank you for joining us.
Morning light, we bloom again. From the deep, we rise within. Down below, then we ascend. Lotus heart, lotus heart, lotus heart. We bloom.